attorneys and witnesses. And if we could begin, please, with the plaintiff.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Katie Hay, and I will be directing Dakota Weirs and Carson Durst, crossing Skylar Weirs, and presenting the closing statement. And I, along with my co-counsel, represent the plaintiff. Our timekeeper has put our team's roster as well as pronouns in the chat. We would really appreciate it if someone on the opposing team could provide pronouns as well, or at least introduce pronouns with their name. Thank you. Permission for my co-counsel to introduce herself.
Yes, please.
Good morning, Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel. My name is Reese Brown, and I'll be directing Dr. Devin Williams, crossing Blake Doncourt, and Dr. Devin Williams in making the opening argument.
Your Honor, may our witnesses introduce themselves?
Yes, you may.
My name is Iris McClure, and I am Dakota Weirs.
My name is Leah Loera, and I'm Carson Durst.
My name is Trinity Doyle, and I am Dr. Casey Rogers.
And perhaps just for clarity, because I may have misunderstood, are there only two counsel for plaintiff?
Yes, there are only two counsel.
And would you just tell me again, please, which of you was going to be doing two of the witnesses?
I am going to be directing Dakota Weirs and Carson Durst and crossing just Skylar Weirs. And my co-counsel will be directing Devin Williams and crossing both Blake Doncourt and Devin Williams.
Thank you. All right, if we could have the introduction, please, of the defense counsel and their witnesses.
Good morning, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Heidi Haverkamp, and I represent Lush Fertilizer. Good evening, or good morning, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Ashley Bierek, and I represent Lush Fertilizer.
Good morning, Your Honor, counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Kira Graham, and I represent Lush Fertilizer. May our witnesses now introduce themselves?
Yes, please.
Good morning, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Liam Anderson, and I am Blake Doncourt.
Good morning, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Moira Newman, and I am Skylar Weirs.
Good morning, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Jordan Merriweather, and I am Dr. Devin Williams.
Thank you. At this point, then, I would like to swear in the various groups. We can do this by team members, witnesses, gallery members, and scoring panelists. While as a normal practice, I would be asking each of you to stand. I think that under the circumstances here, it's appropriate that you may remain seated if you wish, because I know we're going to have some people in our audience or in our gallery section who will not be visible, and it's very important that this oath be taken seriously, but I think we can do it in this fashion. So if I can ask first for team members, if you'd please raise your right hands. Team members, do you promise that the presentation you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to the facts and rules of the mock trial competition? Thank you. Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition. Please indicate you will, or yes, thank you. For our gallery members, I would also ask that you raise your right hands, including teacher and attorney coaches, family members, and friends. Do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? Please signify by saying, I will or I do. And finally, if I could ask our scoring panelists to please raise their right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible, in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition? Thank you. At this time, does the plaintiff have any preliminary matters that they wish to address?
Yes, Your Honor. We have two housekeeping matters at this time. First, we request permission to reserve any time not used in our closing argument for rebuttal. And second, there are stipulated facts that have been agreed to before the trial today. We request that those facts are constructively read into the record. We have no further housekeeping matters at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Hay. And for the defense, are there any preliminary matters?
Yes, Your Honor. We request that the attorneys and witnesses have their own copies of the evidence and that they're not displayed on screen until they have been entered.
I think that's an appropriate request and it will be read.
We also request that if any technical difficulties do arise, that time be stopped.
I also think that's appropriate. And let me just note that I recognize that some of the technical glitches we face are beyond your control. We will certainly try to accommodate in every way we can. And let me just note that it may be from time to time, if there is some difficulty in your being heard, say, because of a breakup in the transmission, or if there is some other situation that arises where you can't be heard, it may be that I address that with you. I mean, I may just interrupt you and say, counsel, I'm having trouble hearing you, or if a witness, I'll address it with them. Please don't be concerned that it's in any way affecting your performance. It's not. It simply is something I want to try to alert you to, because you may not be aware that there's a difficulty in your being heard.
Your Honor,
If there are no other preliminary matters. Oh, I'm sorry. From the defense, was there a preliminary matter?
Your Honor, we also request that Your Honor, along with the scoring panelists, refer back to 9.226 in the rules of competition, as it discusses how to score when an attorney is doubling for the other side.
Yes, I think our scoring panelists are familiar with that particular provision. All right. If there are no other preliminary matters, we will proceed to opening statements. So if we could begin with the opening statement of the plaintiff, please.
Your Honor, members of the jury, and the opposing counsel, my name is Reese Brown, and I represent the plaintiff in this case. Today, we have the burden of proof. My client, Dakota Weirs, has contracted non-Hodgkin's lymphoma due to elongated exposure to Lush fertilizer, specifically Durufo, the main ingredient in Lush. Lush used poison for profit. The evidence will show that Lush was negligent by creating a product that contained Durufo, a harmful chemical that can cause cancer. Specifically, it caused Miss Weirs to develop non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The piano was Miss Weirs' passion and talent, earning her a scholarship to the prestigious music school Juilliard. But Dakota can no longer follow her dreams of going to Juilliard because of her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Darufo caused Dakota's cancer because Lush used poison for profit. Lush had a choice about ensuring the safety of their product, yet they decided to neglect it. To prove that Darufo and Lush caused Dakota Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, we'll call 3 witnesses to the stand. First, Ms. Dakota Weirs herself. She will testify about her life before Lush. She was active in her community before non-Hodgkin's lymphoma took over her life. Dakota will share how she was the student body president, volunteered at a homeless shelter, participated in the National Honor Society, played piano, and had a job working at Haven Landscaping, where she first encountered Lush and their products. The same products would later cause her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and change her life forever. Next, you'll hear from Ms. Carson Durst. Ms. Durst, a former Lush employee, will speak about an email sent by Lush's product manager showing that Lush knew Darufo could be dangerous. She will also share how Lush silenced their scientists who found that Darufo could possibly be hazardous to humans. Finally, you'll hear from Dr. Casey Rogers. Dr. Rogers is a research analyst for a chemical company and an expert in agriculture and chemistry. She'll talk about her studies on Darufo and its dangers. Dr. Rogers found that prolonged exposure to Darufo, like Ms. Weirs, can have effects such as non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Her results showed that people exposed to Darufo for a long time were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer. Dr. Rogers will share the direct link she found between Darufo and cancer. Today, you'll also hear from the defense and their 3 witnesses. They will try to persuade you to believe that Dakota is the one to blame for her life-altering non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Ms. Blake Doncourt, the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, will tell you how Lush chose not to make their fertilizer when that could have eliminated all the risks of the harmful product. Lush silenced their scientists who found Darufo could be dangerous. Also, Ms. Doncourt will talk about their recent divorce with their ex-wife and the financial trouble because of it. Additionally, Skylar Weirs, Dakota Weir's very own twin, will testify today. Skylar has written obscure articles in the past, ranging in topics from flat Earth to anti-vax to UFOs. Not to mention, Skylar has no college degree. Skylar has a gambling problem, and with their family's recent money strain due to Dakota's illness, their family has stopped helping them with those debts. The defense will also call Dr. Devin Williams. Dr. Williams openly admits to having a sizable financial bias in this case. Today, they will talk about the ban of Darufo in the EU and the constant turnover at Lush, possibly hindering the integrity of the studies. I'd like to remind the jury that as the plaintiff, we have the burden of proof. Today, we must prove 1, the defendant manufactured a fertilizer containing Darufo. 2, the defendant was negligent by failing to exercise reasonable care. 3, the plaintiff was one of those people that should have been expected to use the product. And 4, the plaintiff had damages caused by the defendant's negligence. Throughout all the witnesses you will hear from today, there is one common theme. Dakota Weirs is not responsible for her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was Lush, an extensive corporation with the opportunity to make their products safer and chose not to. Lush used poison for profit. We have to prove that more likely than not, Lush was negligent and therefore responsible for Ms. Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Once we meet these expectations, we ask that your verdict rule in favor of Ms. Dakota Weirs, and she is compensated for the damages Lush and Darufo have caused her. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Would defense counsel now wish to give an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may.
Not all heroes wear capes. The temperature of the earth is rising. Dead zones in the ocean are growing. Every day, humanity inches closer to destroying the environment. The problem isn't a couple of missed recycling days. The problem are massive corporations pumping oil into our oceans, chemicals into our rivers, corporations willing to do whatever it takes to make a profit, including take down their competitors. 20 years ago, Blake Doncourt started an eco-friendly fertilizer company with the environment at the forefront. Over the years, his company grew. People chose Lush over bigger brands, not just because it's a great product, but because, like Lush, consumers want to be part of the solution. Once Lush starts to dominate the market, competitors took aim. Dakota Weirs sees a single negative news report and pulls the trigger. Ms. Braun told you that Lush chose poison for profit. But the truth is that Lush fertilizer is the only fertilizer specifically designed to reduce risk to people and to save the environment. The truth is that Lush fertilizer and its CEO, Blake Doncourt, have won several environmental and humanitarian awards for choosing to not include poison in their product. Not all heroes wear capes. Members of the jury, my name is Kira Graham, and together with Ashton Vierick and Heidi Haverkamp, we represent Lush Fertilizer. Today, both sides carry the burden of proof. The plaintiff must prove that Lush intended for Dakota Weirs to use this product, that Lush failed to prevent and in fact caused Dakota Weirs' non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Only if they manage to prove this burden will we, in return, be obliged to prove comparative fault, meaning Dakota's actions are to blame for her non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Dakota Weirs worked with dozens of fertilizers, not just Lush's, but other fertilizers known for being carcinogenic. She did this while ignoring common sense, safety labels, and all of the persistent orders from her boss to wear protective clothing. Dr. Casey Rogers, their own expert witness, confirms that wearing the protective clothing Dakota refused to would have significantly reduced all carcinogenic risk. Carson Durst works for Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitor and holds a personal animosity for Blake Doncourt. The same Mr. Doncourt who had his own company and the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency cleared Truffaut as safe. Scarlett Weirs, an agri-tech expert, agrees and confirms that this is nothing but a pseudo-scientific hit job. Dr. Devin Williams finds that the only study the plaintiff even brings to prove Truffaut causes cancer is unreliable and not credible. Throughout today's trial, as the evidence is shown, ask yourself these three questions. Would we be here right now if Dakota Weirs had just worn the protective clothing she was told to? What do Lush's competitors gain from this lawsuit? And finally, where is the definitive link between Truffaut and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma? At the end of today's trial, Ms. Vierick will answer these three questions for you and ask that you find Lush Fertilizer not liable. Lush Fertilizer is not responsible for Dakota Weirs' non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And to this day, they are the only fertilizer dedicated to a greener tomorrow. Not all heroes wear capes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Graham. Plaintiff's first witness, please.
Thank you. We'd like to call Dakota Weirs to the stand.
All right,
May we proceed?
you may.
Thank you. Hello, Ms. Weirs. Please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Hello, Dakota Weirs, Weirs.
Why are you here today, Ms. Weirs?
I am here today because I am suing Lush Fertilizer because their product caused my cancer.
Can you tell us a bit about what type of cancer you have?
I have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is a type of cancer that affects the lymphatic system. It has caused a lot of problems for me, including swollen lymph nodes, shortness of breath, chills, and a number of other symptoms, all of which make it incredibly hard for me to do the things that I love.
Are you in a lot of pain because of your condition?
Yes. The swollen lymph nodes alone cause a lot of problems for me, not to mention all of my other symptoms. Even sitting in this chair today is difficult.
What do you believe caused your cancer?
I believe that it was Lush fertilizer that caused my cancer. Their product contains a chemical called Drufo, which is banned in the EU.
Where were you exposed to Drufo?
I was exposed to Drufo at Havens Landscaping.
How old were you at the time that you worked there?
I was 14 years old.
Did you wear any protective clothing while working at Haven Landscaping?
Some of the time, but it was incredibly hot outside, and most of my other coworkers, as well as my adults, were not wearing any protective clothing. I would have worn protective clothing, though, if I had known it would cause me cancer. I probably wouldn't have gone even close to the product.
How did you discover that you had cancer?
Well, after I was sitting on the couch with my dad, I saw a news article that came up and said that Lush fertilizer was banned in the EU and contains Drufo. I then did some research and found out that that was the product that we used while I worked at Havens.
Thank you. What was your life like before all of this?
I was an active member of my community. I volunteered at my local homeless shelter. I was in the National Honor Society, and I even was a part of my student government. I also did a lot of extracurricular activities. Now I can barely do any of it.
Ms. Weirs, could you tell us a bit about your sister, Skylar Weirs?
Yes, my sister is my twin, and we haven't been particularly close recently due to the fact that my sister has been frustrated that I have been receiving medical bills and she hasn't been able to pay off her debts due to the fact that she gambles.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Were you two close when you were younger?
We were very close. We almost did everything together, except for when I worked at Havens Landscaping. She has a grass allergy, so it was very difficult for her to work there.
What does she do for a living now?
She is a journalist and also works as a waitress. My sister has written a number of articles. Most are very well educated, but there are a few about flat Earth and UFOs.
Ms. Weirs, what has been the worst part about your cancer?
The worst part about my cancer is the thing that I can't do anymore. My dream in the world was to be a piano player, and that has been taken from me. I'm unable to do that anymore, and that's a horrible realization.
Why is piano so important to you?
Well, my grandfather was an accomplished piano player, and since he passed, I have wanted to get closer to him. And through piano, I felt like I could. I worked extremely hard to get where I am and was able to get into Juilliard, but I'm unable to do that anymore.
So you can't play piano at all anymore?
No, that's the worst part by far. I just want to sit down and play the piano, but when I do, I get bruising and fatigue, and I'm barely able to sit down for the shortest amount of time. So I can't be at Juilliard.
Ms. Weirs, just to reiterate, what are your reasons for being here today?
I am here today because I do not want this to happen to anyone else. It's been a horrible experience for me, and no one should go through what I have been through.
Thank you. Your Honor, no further questions.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Weirs. My name is Ashlyn Burek.
Morning.
Let's begin by talking about your recent diagnosis. You were recently diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
I was, yes.
And you believe that the sole cause of your disease is lush fertilizer.
Yes.
And this started because one day you saw a story on the news.
Yeah.
In which it made claims that Drufo was dangerous.
Yes, it was banned in the EU.
But in this specific news story, it didn't talk about the ban. It just made claims that Drufo was dangerous.
Yes, but with further research, I found out that it had been banned.
So like you said, you started to do more research on lush fertilizer.
Yes.
But you didn't do any other research on any of the other carcinogens that you were exposed to, did you?
No, lush fertilizer was the only one linked to cancer, and it was the primary one I used.
So that's a no. You did not research any of the other carcinogens.
No, I did not. Lush fertilizer.
No. If those were, so you don't know if any of those other fertilizers you worked with could have caused cancer.
Well, there is clear reason to believe that lush fertilizer caused me cancer.
That wasn't my question, Miss Weirs. My question was, you don't know if any of those other fertilizers caused your cancer because you didn't research them.
I don't know for certain, yes.
Now, you talked about how it was banned in the EU, but you don't know why it's banned in the EU, do you?
No, I do not. That is not
Objection
my
beyond the
witness
scope.
statement.
Response?
Your Honor, this is cross-examination, and if the witness doesn't know the answer to the question, she can say so.
Anything further, Ms. Hay?
I think that her research into the ban on the ban done in the EU is not something mentioned in her specific statement, and she didn't further, that's not something she has knowledge in. So it's beyond the scope of her knowledge.
Response, Your Honor?
Very briefly.
Ms. Hay specifically had a line of questioning in her direct about this research, so I believe that I should also be able to question on this line.
I'm going to overrule the objection. Why don't you ask either the question over again or an additional question that might be different, but might also be encompassing the same material?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, you don't know why Drufo isn't used in the EU, do you?
I do not know.
And you don't know if it's at all related to Drufo being a carcinogen.
No, I do not, but it is. Okay.
Now let's talk about your different exposures at Havens Landscaping. You worked at Havens Landscaping for 4 years.
Yes.
And during this time, you were in charge of handling several different fertilizers.
Yes, but lush was the primary one we used.
But you also primarily used several other fertilizers. Isn't that right?
That is correct. Yes.
And you also were in charge of handling the different lawn chemicals.
Yes.
And all of these different chemicals and fertilizers came along with their own risks.
Yes, but none of them were linked to cancer, only lush.
Ms. Weirs, you don't know that for sure, do you?
No, but it has been linked in studies.
You only know about claims that lush fertilizer was linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
That is true, yes.
You don't know about any of the other fertilizers or any of the other lawn chemicals, do you?
No, I do not.
Now let's talk about your blatant disregard for safety protocols. You were always told to wear a mask at Havens Landscaping.
Yes, but it was not.
And you were always told to wear protective gear when handling the different chemicals and fertilizers.
Yes, but it was still not put in place.
And Ms. Weirs, that protective gear included long sleeves
Yes.
and long pants
Yes.
And gloves?
Yes.
But still, you chose to wear shorts and t-shirts.
I would have worn the protective clothing if I'd known it caused me cancer.
Miss Weir, I'm not asking what you would have done. I'm asking if you actively chose to go against your boss's orders and wear shorts and t-shirts.
Well, none of the other people were wearing it, but I
Miss
did
Weir,
not.
so that's a yes. You actively chose to go against your boss's orders.
I actively did, yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect examination.
No, Your Honor.
Right, thank you for your testimony. You may step down. If we could have plaintiff's next witness, please.
We'd like to call Carson Durst to the stand.
You may proceed.
All right. Ms. Durst, please state your name and spell your last name for the record.
Hello, my name is Carson Durst, D-U-R-S-T.
And can you tell us a bit about your history with Lush?
Well, I got hired in 2003, right after I graduated from college. It wasn't my plan to work there originally, but my then best friend, Charles, son of Blake, told me that I could apply for Lush. And so I put in my application, and soon enough, I got hired for the research and development team.
Sorry. Can you tell us a bit about your relationship with Blake Doncourt?
Well, 20 years ago, his family was like a second family to me. I was best friend with his son, Charles. And yeah, we were close.
What research did you do at Lush?
I researched the chemical compound that compose Drufo specifically to see if there is any dangerous side effects to it.
What did you discover?
I discovered a study done in England on rats, and it said that,
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Response?
In regards to the study she found? Yes, I'm asking.
I believe
for
that, oh,
clarification.
yes, I believe that was the objection. Yes. And counsel, for the defense, you may clarify if that it was incorrect. Was that the basis of your objection, or was that your objection?
Yes, Your Honor. It was the basis of my objection.
I was adding that as foundation for her further findings that she shared.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Yes, you may, Ms. Graham.
Your Honor, Ms. Durst's exact words was that in this study said she was going to go into the statement within the document, which is out of court and for the truth of the matter asserted.
Right. Anything additional, Ms. Hay?
Could I allow my witness to rephrase her answer?
Let's do this. I will sustain the objection and allow you to lay further foundation for this witness's knowledge or what she wishes to testify about.
All right, thank you. So in your research, did any other sources confirm what you were researching?
Well, we also did a study ourselves, and I wasn't the only one that was concerned about Drufo.
Did you share your findings with anyone else?
Yes, I did. I shared my findings with Jerry and Langley, and we would also have regular meetings where we would discuss our findings.
All right. Let's see. Ms. Durst, do you have a copy of what has been previously marked as Exhibit 4?
Yes, I do.
Does opposing counsel have a copy of what has been marked as Exhibit 4?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, Ms. Durst, I would like to direct your attention to that exhibit. Would you identify it, please?
Yes, it is a email I received from Gary Langley.
How do you know this?
I know this because I received the email.
Is it a fair and accurate representation?
Yes.
Your Honor, we move to enter Exhibit 4 into evidence.
Defense position on Exhibit 4.
No objection, Your Honor.
Exhibit 4 will be received.
Permission for my co-counsel to screen share Exhibit 4.
Yes, she may.
Thank you. Ms. Durst, could you please read aloud the first sentence in the second paragraph?
Yes. Following our lab's June Drufo study, concerns have arisen regarding
Objection,
generalized.
Your Honor. Cumulative.
Forgive me, counsel. There was a glitch in the transmission. Would you repeat what you said?
Objection, Your Honor. Cumulative.
Any response?
I'm sorry, I can't understand.
I believe counsel's objection was cumulative.
Could I have a moment to confer with my co-counsel?
Yes, you may.
Your Honor, may I rephrase the question?
Yes, if you wish to do so, you may.
Okay. Ms. Durst, so I'll direct your attention to the second paragraph's first sentence. Sorry. Actually, I'll just move on. Could you give me your thoughts on this email, Ms. Durst, when you received it?
Well, to me, the email is not completely clear, but the agenda was made clear during weekly staff meetings, and there was certainly pressure from management for the internal studies to be read a certain way.
Did anyone in the research teams express concerns regarding Drufo?
Yes, a few others did. One scientist expressed concern that not only may Drufo contain a carcinogen, but her analysis found that it was perhaps linked to non-Hodgkin's lymphoma specifically.
And how did management react to this?
Well, they tried to hide it. Alex Monroe said, let's keep it in the walls until we figure out what we are doing.
Was there any follow-up done to this research?
Well, about a month later, I received a copy of the study, and it did not mention anything about our concerns that were validated by our research.
Did it talk about non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
No, it did not mention it anywhere.
Are there any alternatives to using raw Drufo?
Yes, you can bake it, and that will eliminate the chances of it being carcinogenic.
To your knowledge, does Lush bake their fertilizer?
Well, to my knowledge, while I was working there, no, they did not bake Drufo.
So overall, what is your impression of Drufo based off your time at Lush?
Well, based on my time at Lush, Drufo to me was carcinogenic from my studies. And I believe that Lush failed to disclose potential health effects of their product to the people. And we brought multiple complaints to them, and they chose not to pay attention to them.
Thank you. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Durst. My name is Kier Graham.
Good morning.
Now, right before graduating college, you still had not found a job?
No, I did not.
You commiserated about this with your friend, Charlie Doncourt.
Yes.
Charlie Doncourt told you that Lush Fertilizer was hiring interns over the summer?
Yes, he did tell me that.
Charlie Doncourt's father is Blake Doncourt, correct?
Yes.
And Blake Doncourt runs Lush Fertilizer?
Yes.
The Doncourts were like the family you never had. Yes?
Yep. Yes, that's correct.
So Charlie was sure that his father could pull some strings for you.
Yeah, that's what he told me.
When you applied to Lush Fertilizer, you were hired.
Yeah.
You were even promoted in only 3 months?
Yes, I believe it was because of my hard work.
There were rumors around the office, however, that it was because of your relationship with Blake Doncourt.
Well, like I said, I was a hard worker, so I cannot control how other people feel.
Is that a yes?
Yeah.
You were even chosen over more qualified and experienced engineers for the job.
Well, like I said, I'm a hard worker. So if they chose to hire me.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Durst. Let's talk about your time at Lush Fertilizer. You were specifically in charge of researching C3NO9P.
Yes.
While you were researching, you found that this compound could be beneficial to the environment.
Yeah.
You also found multiple studies claiming that this compound was not carcinogenic in rats.
No, I believe I found a study that it is carcinogenic in rats.
Ms. Durst, is your testimony today that you did not find multiple studies confirming that this was not carcinogenic in rats?
I did find a research that it was carcinogenic in rats. I'm not really understanding your question.
Ms. Durst, it is your testimony today that that you found no studies confirming that this compound was not carcinogenic in rats.
No.
Ms. Durst, you found a study by the Mattis Bernard Research Center.
Yes, I did.
You believe this study is true?
Yes.
You submitted it to your executives, or in the journal that went to your executives.
Yes.
You also submitted it to be evidence today here in court.
Yes, I did.
And in this study, it discusses multiple other studies made by the manufacturers that found that this compound was not carcinogenic in rats.
They ignored my research.
Ms. Durst, I did not ask if they ignored your research. I asked if in this study you claim is true, it said that the manufacturers conducted multiple long-term studies.
Yes, and it was ignored.
And these studies found that this compound was not carcinogenic.
Yes, but it was
ignored. Thank you, Ms. Durst. Please, let's talk about your final times at Lush Fertilizer. Ms. Durst, after another abysmal performance review in 2005, you went to talk to Blake Doncourt.
Yes, I did.
Specifically about your boss, Jerry Langley?
Yes.
Blake Doncourt told you to work out whatever problem you were having with her on your own.
Yes.
His reaction confused you?
Yes, because at the time I was close with him.
It made you disheartened?
Yes, it did.
It even made you seething.
Yes.
So you decided to apply to Terrace Greenery.
Well, since I felt I wasn't getting appreciated of my work there, I decided to leave and apply to a different company.
Is that a yes? You applied to Terrace Greenery?
Yes.
Terrace Greenery is Lush Fertilizer's biggest competitor.
Is that a question?
Yes. Is Lush Fertilizer Terrace Greenery's biggest competitor?
Yes.
You now work for Terrace Greenery,
Yes.
and you were called here today by the plaintiff to testify.
Yes.
The plaintiff is suing Blake Doncourt's company, Lush Fertilizer,
Yes.
the company you felt marginalized while working at,
Yes.
run by the person whom you felt betrayed you.
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Redirect examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Durst, why do you believe you were hired and promoted in the end?
Because I'm a hard worker. I did what they told me to do, and I worked hard for that position.
Do you believe the complaints made regarding your work were valid?
No, they were not even mentioned in the research that the study conclusion that they sent out.
And why did you leave Lush?
Because I felt underappreciated and my work wasn't being appreciated and my complaints and my study was being neglected.
All right, thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any recross examination?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may.
Ms. Durst, you just said that the reason you're promoted was because of your hard work.
Yes.
Isn't it true that later on in your job, you got several bad performance reviews?
Yes.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you for your testimony. Plaintiff's next witness, please.
We call Dr. Casey Rogers to the stand. Good morning, Dr. Rogers.
Good morning.
Could you please state your name and spell your last for the record?
Dr. Casey Rogers, Rogers.
And are you currently employed?
I am
And where do you work?
at UC Berkeley. I'm a professor.
Do you have a college degree?
I do. I have a PhD in agriculture and entomology at UC Berkeley.
Do you have any prior work in this field?
I do. I worked as a research analyst for a large multinational chemical company.
And do you have any published work in this field?
Yes, I have published numerous scholarly articles on the negative and harmful effects of prolonged exposure to various chemicals, one of which includes Drufo.
Your Honor, we move to enter this witness as an expert in horticulture, agriculture, and entomology in the negative effects of Drufo pursuant to Rule 702. Their knowledge and skill in this area have been shown.
Defense position regarding the expertise of the witness.
Defense has no objection to Dr. Rogers being tenured in the first field. However, we request that more foundation as to experience, knowledge, training, or education be laid in the field of experience on Drufo.
Ms. Brown, anything you would like to say with respect to that, or any further questions you wish to ask of your witness before having me consider whether to qualify her as an expert in this area?
If I may, can I ask a few more questions?
You certainly may.
Thank you. Dr. Rogers, how many studies have you done about Darufo?
I think 4.
And your findings led you to do more research?
They did.
And what do you have a degree in?
I have a PhD in agriculture and entomology, but I am also a professor of horticulture as well.
And specifically in your studies, you studied Darufo, correct?
That is true.
Your Honor, we move to enter this witness as an expert in horticulture, agriculture, entomology, and the negative effects of Darufo pursuant to 702. Their knowledge and skill in this area have been shown.
Defense position.
Your Honor, we still have no objection to the beginning fields. However, the negative effects of Darufo as a field, as Dr. Rogers being tenured in, we do not believe there is sufficient experience or education in this sort of field.
I will qualify the doctor as an expert in the offered areas, but I certainly will permit cross-examination regarding her testimony.
Yes.
Thank you.
You may proceed.
Dr. Rogers, are you familiar with Darufo?
I am.
And have you done any studies about Darufo as a product?
Yes, I have.
And what did you explain in this study?
Well, I discovered that Darufo was developed in 2003 by the scientists of Lush Fertilizers Research and Development Team. I personally analyzed the chemical makeup of each product using a mass spectrometer at Berkeley, and it was already known that Darufo is carcinogenic in rats. So the study found an increase in serious health conditions and diagnoses in those individuals who were exposed to Darufo, as compared to a control group. Specifically, the study found higher incidences of cancer, one of which includes non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
And did this study follow the scientific process?
It did.
And once conducting this study, did your findings lead you to do more research?
Yes.
And how was this next study conducted?
Well, in this next study, I put together 3 groups: a control group of people who had never been exposed to Darufo, a group of people that use the products containing Darufo on occasion, and a group who were exposed to Darufo on a regular daily basis. And this study monitored the groups over a significant amount of years, and I followed their exposure.
And once again, did this study follow the scientific process?
Yes, it did.
And what was the outcome?
Well, I found that people with prolonged exposure were 10 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer than those without exposure, and 5 times more likely to be diagnosed with cancer than those with occasional exposure. And these studies suggest that there is a correlation between Darufo and cancer. The majority of these diagnosed with cancer were diagnosed with an endocrine and exocrine-based variety, and the latter of which includes Dakota-Weir's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Can you please explain what non-Hodgkin's lymphoma is?
It's a detrimental cancer, and it kind of kills the body's immune system.
And what's the 5-year survival rate of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
72%.
And in your professional opinion, what do you think about Darufo?
Well, I believe it was much rushed to market, and it didn't have any significant studies on its safety, and it could be detrimental to any person's health.
And did you hear Ms. Dakota testify today?
I did.
And did you hear her talk about protective clothing use at Haven Landscaping?
Yes, I did.
Can using protective gear such as a mask help people stay safe when using chemicals such as Darufo?
It's a possibility, but like I heard Dakota testify, she was working in very high degree weather conditions, and all the adults and role models around her were not wearing any of those clothes. In her position, with her knowledge, I believe I would have done the same as well.
And what did your study find about wearing these types of protective gear?
Well, in my study, it was inconclusive about whether these articles of clothing were even protected from Darufo.
I don't even know what the hell's going on.
And how do people How do people contract non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Objection. Outside the scope of the witness's expertise, Dr. Rogers has not been tenured in the field of toxicology or any sort of medical field that in this testimony would require a specialized knowledge.
Response.
Dr. Rogers has an extensive research on Darufo, and she is entered in the negative effects of Darufo, and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma can be a negative effect of Darufo.
Anything additional?
This testimony requires a specialized knowledge in a field that Dr. Casey Rogers has not been tenured in.
I'm going to overrule the objection. I'll permit the answer.
Thank you.
Could you restate the question, please?
Of course. How do people contract non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Well, it's a genetic disease and is usually caused by exposure to an environmental condition, one of which includes pesticides. And the toxins in these pesticides can be absorbed through the skin or inhaled through the respiratory system.
And have you personally examined Ms. Dakota's medical records?
I have.
And based on your general knowledge of Darufo, could a chemical like Darufo lead to cancer such as non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
To my knowledge, yes.
And in your opinion, could Darufo have caused Dakota's non-Hodgkin's lymphoma?
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Dr. Rogers. My name is Heidi Haverkamp.
Good morning.
Let's talk about your study. You conducted a study pertinent to this case.
I did.
And this study examined 3 groups.
Yes. One
the
of them.
first being your control group having no exposure to Darufo.
Correct.
And your second group having occasional exposure to Darufo.
Correct.
And your third group having prolonged exposure to Darufo.
Correct. I appreciate you listening to that. Nobody really does when I talk about this study.
Dr. Rogers, throughout your study, the only chemical that you controlled for was Darufo.
That is correct.
Let's talk about your experience as an expert witness. This is the first time you'll be testifying as an expert.
Yes.
And you have been retained by the plaintiff to testify in this matter.
Yes, they believed in my studies and they believed that I could be helpful to them.
And Dr. Rogers, you hope that this won't be your last time giving testimony.
No, I truly enjoy what I'm doing here and I think it's great.
Because Dr. Rogers, you want to be on the forefront of this battle.
Could you specify battle?
Dr. Rogers, in your own words, you want to be on the forefront of this battle.
I believe I said I want to be on the forefront of many class action lawsuits to come in the future.
Dr. Rogers, in your statement, you say that you want to be on the forefront of this battle, correct?
Okay.
Let's talk about the second part of your study. You examined ways to best mitigate and prevent exposure.
I did.
To things like fertilizers or pesticides.
Correct.
And through this study, you found that these fertilizers or pesticides could be absorbed through contact with the skin.
Yes.
You also found that they could be inhaled while in the aerosolized version.
Yes, through the respiratory system.
And although your study was inconclusive, you made recommendations.
Yes.
And these recommendations include wearing a mask while working with the product.
Yes, one of those recommendations was wearing a mask.
And the other recommendation was when working with chemicals to wear protective clothing.
My study, those were inconclusive, but to be on the safe side, I did recommend.
You still made these recommendations, correct, Dr. Rogers?
To be on the safe side, yes.
You are aware that these exact recommendations are listed on the back of all of Lush Fertilizer's products.
I am fully aware.
No further questions at this time.
Redirect examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, you've done multiple studies about Darufo, correct?
I have.
And they all examined the dangers of this?
Yes, I don't see how adding in any other chemicals would have affected the constant variable of drufa.
And as a person, do you want to do the right thing?
Of course, I have a moral compass just like everyone else.
And would you consider testifying today about the negative effects of drufa the right thing?
Yes, I want to, like Dakota said, I want to make sure this doesn't happen to anyone else.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Recross examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Rogers, once again, you have been retained to testify in this matter,
I have.
and you hope to be on the forefront of this battle.
Yes.
No further questions at this time.
Thank you for your testimony. The defense's first witness, please.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense calls Blake Doncourt to the stand.
You may proceed.
Good morning, Mr. Doncourt. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Blake Doncourt. That's spelled Doncourt.
Doncourt, what's your involvement in today's trial?
Well, I'm the CEO of Lush Fertilizer, and I'm representing the company today.
What is Lush Fertilizer?
Lush Fertilizer is a company that we started a little bit over 2 decades ago, and it was specifically aimed at creating a environmentally friendly solution to the fertilizer industry. And we also started the company with the intention of wanting to give back to the community and to the environment.
What has your involvement in the company been?
Well, I started here a little bit over 2 decades ago, and I've built the company from the small startup that we were into the huge multinational corporation we are now. It's been a wild ride, and I'm really proud of everything that all of my employees and all the people that helped us have done.
What sort of responsibilities come along with your job?
Well, I really oversee all of the various departments of Lush Fertilizer. So I oversee operations, marketing, research and development, safety, and of course, I also oversee our charitable wing.
Tell us a bit more about that charity work.
Here at Lush Fertilizer, we wanted to make sure that we're offsetting any sort of footprint we leave on the earth, and hopefully going above and beyond that. So we donate 10% of our profits every year to environmental causes. Specifically, we have a charity geared towards cleaning up the oceans of any of the pollution that's in there.
Objection, relevance.
Response.
Your Honor, the plaintiff has tried to attack the character of Lush Fertilizer as a company and Blake Doncourt himself. This line of questioning is simply a way to address that, and ultimately this leads back to the question of is Lush Fertilizer liable or not? So it is relevant.
Anything additional, Ms. Brown?
The charities that Lush donates to is not relevant to the safety of drufa.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Now let's talk about the fertilizer itself. What is Lush Fertilizer?
Lush Fertilizer is a relatively new product in the agritech market. It uses the bonding agent Drufo to better bond the nitrogen within the fertilizer to some of the other chemicals, making it overall much safer, effective, and environmentally friendly than any other fertilizer on the market today.
Who uses it?
It's used by farmers, landscaping companies, and gardeners, but it's specifically meant to be used by adults and not children.
Are there any dangers associated with your product?
Well, any chemical product is going to come with a few minor dangers. Of course, Lush fertilizer has no major dangers and is safer than most other fertilizer products, but we have identified a risk of skin, respiratory, and eye irritation.
Mr. Doncourt, does your company do anything in order to mitigate these risks?
Of course, we actually were not required by law to place a warning label on our product, but we chose to do so anyways. And we warn everybody who uses the product to wear long sleeve clothing at all times, as well as long pants, as well as a N95 mask and eye protection.
Switching gears a bit, let's talk about some of the people who've appeared in court today. How do you know Carson Durst?
Carson Durst was a former employee of Lush Fertilizer.
What was her job at the company?
She worked in our research and development team and specifically looked into the possible side effects of Lush Fertilizer.
What did her studies find?
Her studies, as well as all subsequent studies within the company, found that there was no link between Drufo or Lush Fertilizer and any sort of negative health effects.
Does Miss Durst still work at the company?
Thankfully for Lush Fertilizer, she no longer works at the company.
Where does she work now?
She now works for Terra's Greenery.
Was there any correlation? Does Miss Durst still support her previous findings?
No, Miss Durst does not support the findings of her research that she conducted while at Lush Fertilizer anymore.
Was there any correlation between when Miss Durst left the company and when she retracted her support of her previous findings?
Well, as you might expect, shortly after leaving the company, she retracted her support for the findings of her research.
Now, Mr. Doncourt, what do you have to say overall about Carson Durst's claims?
You know, I'm not out to get Carson Durst. I really don't have a vendetta against her or anything, but you really need to look at the research that she conducted. It says that there is no link, and that's what should be focused on.
Do you know anyone else who are making claims that Drufo is dangerous?
The main other person would be Casey Rogers.
What are her claims?
Casey Rogers claims to have conducted a study that found a link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
When did you first hear about this study?
Rather strangely, I really only first heard about this study during the litigation of this case.
Were you able to look at it at all?
After I heard about it, I did get a chance to look at it.
Did any concerns arise when you read this study?
Well, of course, I am not a scientist and I can't speak to some of those more scientific aspects, although I know my friend Dr. Williams has many problems with the science within the study. However, I did notice that the study was not peer-reviewed, and that's a relatively common practice within this field. And it basically means that the study was not submitted to an independent board of scientists for review. So really, we just have to trust Casey Rogers' word for everything that's contained within the study, as well as the conclusions that arose from it.
Finally, Mr. Doncourt, would you ever authorize the release of a product to the public that you knew could cause cancer or any other life-threatening diseases?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Well, when I started this company, safety and environmentally friendliness was at the forefront of my mind, and I really wanted that to be what defined Lush Fertilizer. I would never want to hurt any of our consumers or anybody at all. But you know, I get it. I'm a CEO. You really don't want to believe me, but believe me when I say this. Creating a product that could be dangerous, that could be carcinogenic or poisonous, would be bad for business and bad for profits.
Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Good morning, Mr. Blake Doncourt.
Good morning.
You're the Chief Executive Officer at Lush Fertilizer, correct?
I'm very proud to be, yes.
And you started the company in 2000?
Yes.
Your company developed Drufo as a product, right?
Drufo is not a product of our company, no.
You've recently gone through a divorce with Miss Morgan Doncourt.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance?
Response.
I'm laying foundation about the financial strain Mr. Doncourt is under relating to the cost of baking.
Response, Your Honor.
You may.
Mr. Doncourt is a CEO of a company. His divorce doesn't have a major effect on any of his financials and should not be brought into this case today.
I think that I'll allow some questions along this line, but there will be a need to tie it up. So if that doesn't happen, I'll certainly allow you to revisit your objection.
The judge ordered you to pay Morgan a large amount of money every month.
Yes, the judge ordered me to pay a pretty reasonable amount of money, but yes.
And you're also paying investors who provided startup funds for your company.
Well, we're still delivering back on some of our promises there, yes.
Would you say this is a lot of financial pressure?
Not really, no.
Lush conducted studies about the safety of Drufo, correct?
The studies found that Drufo was safer than any product out on the market today, any fertilizer, and extremely safe.
And you heard Carson Durst testify today?
I did.
Do you personally know Carson?
Yes, unfortunately, I did know Carson in the past. We're not really friends any longer.
But they were a close family friend and former employee?
She was a friend of my son, yes.
Mr. Durst mentioned she heard a female colleague bring up the safety concerns of Drufo. Had you heard about this?
No, Ms. Durst is most likely lying about that, considering that she has been lying about the safety of Lush this entire time.
You heard her talk about how Lush's own scientists recommend they bake the fertilizer?
This is again yet another lie.
But your company donates 10% of its profits, correct?
We do. We donate to our own charity that cleans up the oceans, as well as a charity that helps to clean nitrates out of the soil, just so we can offset that carbon footprint, that nitrogen footprint that we might leave on the earth.
So would you say your company values the well-being of others?
Well, of course, that is exactly why I started this company, is to make the world a better place and make a product that's better for people and the environment. And that's what we did.
And have you heard of baking fertilizer?
I have heard of baking fertilizer. It's a good measure to take in products that are dangerous.
And would you aware that baking your products would completely eliminate all cancer risks?
Well, the risk within there was no elevated risk of carcinogenicity within Lush, but it could have slightly lowered that risk.
Would you consider it overkill to bake your fertilizer?
There really is no risk compared to everything else in the world within Lush fertilizer of carcinogenicity. There's no elevated risk, so there just was no need to.
Isn't people's health being worth overkill for?
I never put the health of my customers in danger. And Drufo and Lush fertilizer is in fact the safest product that my customers could choose.
Would you consider cancer a serious health condition?
I think that's pretty obvious, yes.
And wouldn't you like to eliminate all risks of this serious health condition in your product?
We already have eliminated the risk of carcinogenicity within the product.
And is having a risk-free product important?
That's exactly why we made Lush fertilizer. We made a risk-free product.
You said the well-being of others is important to you, but not important enough to ensure your product is 100% safe.
Lush fertilizer is 100% safe.
Lush is one of the best-selling fertilizer companies, yes?
Because of the extremely innovative product we have made leaps and bounds within the agritech industry, and now we are one of the best-selling fertilizer products.
Does the success of your company allow you to live a pretty comfortable life?
I guess that's subjective to the person, but I would say that I make enough.
And does baking your fertilizer cost extra?
Baking the fertilizer would have cost extra, but there really wasn't any need to do it.
But you don't pay the extra money to ensure your product is completely safe?
Lush fertilizer is completely safe.
But baking it would be the only way to make sure it is risk-free?
Lush fertilizer really is risk-free.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Redirect examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Doncourt, why did you choose to not bake your fertilizer?
I chose to not bake the fertilizer because there really was no risk associated with the fertilizer. It's much safer than any other product on the market. And so there just truly was no need to do that.
Was this decision at all related to either your divorce or your different loans?
No, we have plenty of money to pay back the loans. And the divorce actually happened after the decision to not bake, so there was no correlation whatsoever.
And finally, Mr. Doncourt, what would you have done if your studies had found that Drufo was dangerous?
If our studies had found that Drufo was at all dangerous, we would never have released the product to the market.
Thank you, Mr. Doncourt. No further questions, Your Honor.
Any recross examination?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you for your testimony. Your next witness, please, for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Skylar Weir to the stand. Good morning, Ms. Weirs.
Good morning.
Will you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Skylar Weirs. That's Weirs.
Ms. Weirs, what do you do for a living?
I'm an investigative journalist for the Rationalist magazine.
And how does what you do for work relate to today's case?
Well, I actually authored a series of articles relating the issues of individual health versus corporate policy. And a part of that series was on Drufo.
Would you please explain how you researched for these articles?
Yeah, I spent a considerable amount of time, about a year, just reviewing different research publications, the references used in those research publications, as well as looking at a wealth of information maintained by the United States Department of Agriculture, as well as the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture.
Is Drufo and its effects on people and the environment part of agritech and therefore what you researched?
Absolutely it is. And that's why I was part of the series of articles that I wrote, yes.
Your Honor, the defense requests the court recognize Skylar Weirs as an expert in the field of agritech, as we have proven that she has spent considerable time researching publications from agritech companies, the references on those publications, and a wealth of information from the USDA and NASDA, which were the requirements in your pretrial order.
The plaintiff's position regarding that proffer.
No objections, Your Honor.
Witness will be qualified as requested and permitted to give opinion testimony.
Ms. Weirs, what did you specifically research for Drufo?
I was looking for if there was a link between exposure to Drufo and the development of cancer.
Did you find a link?
No, there were no articles that reached a conclusion to any level of certainty that there is a link between exposure to Drufo and the development of cancer.
From all your research, were you able to discern why there was a belief that there was a causal link between Drufo and non-Hodgkin's lymphoma or cancer?
Yes, and unfortunately, this is quite common. It's something known as a pseudoscientific hit job, upon which a rival company recognizes a product that is revolutionary and fantastic for the market, and therefore tries to demonize or defame the company that has created that product so that, people won't buy it.
Well, why would you call Drufo or Lush fertilizer revolutionary?
Simply because of the way Drufo was designed. Drufo makes it so that it is safer for the environment as well as the people that use it, and it is a whole lot safer than any other commercial fertilizer on the market.
How does it help the environment?
Well, with fertilizers, you're going to get a lot of synthetic nitrogen, and Drufo is designed that it bonds the active ingredients in the fertilizer to the actual grass, which reduces the solubility of the nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium in the fertilizer, which therefore decreases the amount of nitrogen that would then turn into nitrates, which could lead to an excess amount of nitrates in groundwater runoffs, which could then lead to algal blooms, blue baby syndromes, a whole host of things.
Ms. Spears, could nitrates in the water supply possibly lead to dead zones in the oceans or waters?
Absolutely. If algal blooms, reach a certain capacity, then they will lead to a dead zone.
Objection relevance.
Response?
Your Honor, this is highly relevant, as if Ms. Weirs is allowed to testify, she will say that it does cause dead zones and that Lush fertilizer specifically made it so that their product does not. How this shows that Lush fertilizer affects the community in a good way, and how a company affects the community and the environment adds the credibility of that company and discredits the claim from the plaintiff that Lush is negligible for something like harming the people that live in it.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Ms. Weirs, let's talk about your relationship with the plaintiff. How are you related to Dakota Weirs?
Dakota is my twin sister.
Since Dakota is your twin sister, why are you testifying against her?
Well, I'm not exactly testifying against her. This isn't something where I'm getting up and saying that, I saw her shoot somebody. I'm simply testifying about my research and about the truth. And unfortunately, that is going against her case.
Ms. Weirs, did you form any expert opinions in relation to today's trial?
Yes, I did.
What are those expert opinions?
In my expert opinion, after all of the articles that I reviewed and the references in those articles, as well as taking from the United States Department of Agriculture and the National Association of State Departments of Agriculture, it is my expert opinion that there is no link between exposure to Drufo and the development of any type of cancer.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination.
Ms. Weirs, do you have a degree in toxicology?
No, I don't.
A degree in epidemiology?
No, I don't. I don't need one.
Oncology?
No, I don't, and I don't need one. That wouldn't be relevant to this case.
Do you have a medical degree?
No, I don't.
Do you have a college degree?
No, I don't have a college degree, and I don't need one. I have an
Is it true?
amount of information. I have it in my.
Yes or no is fine. Is it true that you do not have any field work or other real life personal experience that may have given you experience with these subjects?
My experience is based in the articles that I reviewed.
Yes or no, please.
my experience is based in the articles that I reviewed. So I don't have any formal training or experience, but I don't need one.
So it's a no that you have not had any field work or real life experience in these subjects.
As I just stated, I don't need one because of the articles that I looked at.
Yes or no is fine, please.
And I stated, no, I don't. Because what I
Thank
looked at
you.
more than.
You also write for the magazine Rationalist. Is that true?
Absolutely, and I'm proud of that.
They're devoted to promoting scientific skepticism and resisting the spread of pseudoscience, superstition, and irrational beliefs.
Yes, they are. And it's a worthy cause.
And as you heard in Dakota's testimony, you have written in the past articles supporting UFOs, flat earth theory, chemtrails, and anti-vax culture.
Dakota believes what she would like to believe about my writing, but I write to inform my viewers, to inform my readers so that they.
Thank you. You are paid for this writing, correct?
Yes. Your objection?
Can Ms. Hay please let my witness answer? Ms. Newman did not give a yes or a no to that question and was cut off immediately without actually giving an answer.
Well, I think what I will do is I will permit an additional further questioning, but certainly allow you to revisit that during your redirect examination. You may continue, Ms. Hay.
Are you a freelance writer?
Yes, I am.
Are you being paid to testify?
Not specifically by Lush Fertilizer, no.
And is it true that you've had a history of gambling?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Response?
This line of questioning goes to show the possible financial bias that this witness has against the plaintiff.
Your Honor, may I respond?
You may.
This is heavily more prejudicial than probative, and to 403, unfair prejudice. Whether or not Ms. Newman gambles or not does not directly go to her financial situation, as that could be caused by a number of things. Ms. Hay can ask about Ms. Weirs' financial situation without specifically asking about gambling.
Ms. Hay, anything additional?
I believe her reason for being at a loss of money, as she says in her statement, is because of her gambling. So her loss of money is directly related to her gambling problem.
Objection sustained.
So it is true that you found yourself at a loss for money.
At one point in my life, yes, I did.
And your father is now supporting Dakota and not you?
Yes, which is absolutely worthy. I admire him greatly for that.
Your father agreed to shoulder the cost of Dakota's expensive medical treatment in the event that this lawsuit isn't successful, correct?
He did, yes.
And you said in your statement that no fertilizer would ever be completely safe, correct?
Of course not, which is why I admire Lush Fertilizers so greatly.
Thank you.
They.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Redirect examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Weirs, are you here today because of money?
Absolutely not. No, that doesn't affect my testimony or my research at all.
And Ms. Weirs, right before Ms. Hay cut you off, you said that you admired Lush Fertilizer. Why do you admire Lush Fertilizer?
I admire Lush Fertilizer so much because they recognize that fertilizers are by definition poison, and they have taken every single step that they could to reduce the amount of exposure that their consumers could have to some poisons, and they have reduced the amount of harm their products could have on the environment as well as to their customers.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Recross examination.
No recross, Your Honor.
Thank you for your testimony. Defense's next witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor. The defense calls Dr. Devin Williams to the stand. Good morning, Dr. Williams. Please introduce yourself to the jury.
Good morning. My name is Devin Williams. That's spelled Williams.
Let's begin with your professional education. Please describe your education.
Of course, let's go back to when I obtained my Bachelor's of Science in Toxicology at Colorado State University. After this, I got my master's degree in forensic toxicology, again at CSU. I later went on to earn my PhD, again in toxicology at CSU.
Do you have any postdoctoral education?
I attended a post-PhD program in pharmacotoxicology at the University of Utah.
Tell us a little bit about your professional experience.
Of course, after I obtained my Bachelor's of Science, I worked at Larimer County office with the Chief Medical Examiner toxicologist. After earning my PhD, I worked as an assistant professor at Denver CU Andrews Medical Campus Graduate School, where I taught toxicology and pathophysiology with the division of pharmacology and medicinal chemistry. At the same time, I worked as an assistant associate professor at CSU School of Pharmacy.
From your education and your experience, are there any particular skills that you have gained?
From the years I spent in this field, I'm able to identify toxic chemicals and the effects of those chemicals using biomolecular and biochemical markers.
How have you applied these skills further in your career?
Well, I teach 3 courses all revolving around toxicology at the University of New Mexico School of Pharmacy.
What is your current occupation?
Currently, I lead the toxicology and research labs at Lush Fertilizer. I'm also the outgoing chair of ethics.
How long have you been in research and development?
I started my career with Lush about 12 years ago.
How long have you been on the toxicology side of that?
I've led the labs for 7 years now.
From your experience working at Lush, are there any particular skills that you use daily?
A key skill or tool that toxicological scientists use is statistics on a day-to-day basis. Personally, I use statistics every day to come
Objection,
to
relevance.
Response?
I'm simply laying foundations as to the field that Dr. Devin Williams will be tenured in.
All right, I'll overrule the objection and permit you to continue laying your foundation.
I'll ask again, Dr. Williams, are there any particular skills or tools that you use daily in your work?
Yes, statistics are an integral tool for toxicologists to use every day. I use them every day to come to accurate conclusions about the data.
Do you hold any certifications in your fields?
I hold several certifications all around toxicology in 4 states: Colorado, New Mexico, Utah, and Wyoming.
And have you authored any publications?
I've authored 6 publications, 3 of which have been published. 1 is submitted and awaiting publication, and the other 2 are still being written.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense requests that the court recognize Dr. Devin Williams as an expert in the field of pharmacotoxicology with a specialization in environmental and occupational chemicals with a knowledge and use in statistics, as his testimony will assist the jury in determining the fact and issue.
The position of plaintiff regarding this offer.
No objections.
Witness will be qualified as an expert as requested and permitted to give opinion testimony.
Now, Dr. Williams, we've heard a lot about Drufo. What is Drufo?
Drufo is a chemical constituent, a bonding agent in Lush Fertilizer.
What was your role in the development of Drufo?
I led the labs that developed Drufo.
Would you explain what makes Lush different from other forms of fertilizers?
Well, Lush contains Drufo, which is revolutionary for the environment and for people in general.
Is Lush containing Drufo sold worldwide?
Lush is sold worldwide. However, Lush containing Drufo is not, no.
What is your understanding as to why this is?
Specifically in the European Union, under the EU nitrate directive, more than an incidental accumulation of nitrate cannot be sold within its borders.
So how does Drufo fit under this nitrate directive?
Drufo contains nitrogen, but it does not contain nitrate. However, in lab tests, this can change.
What is your understanding as to why the EU finally made the decision to not let Drufo be sold in the European Union?
Well, the EU takes lab tests and they take Drufo, put it in a petri dish, and add all kinds of bacteria that you would never find in the environment to try to get it to produce nitrate. And that's what they did with Drufo.
Are you aware of any other reasons?
No, this ban is not concerned over any cancer risks.
Now, let's talk about Dr. Rogers. Have you read Dr. Rogers' study in this case?
Yes, I have.
And have you fully reviewed the conclusions that are made in this study?
Yes.
In your expert opinion, would you say that this study was a valid one?
No, I would not.
Why is that?
It's a case of confirmation bias. Dr. Rogers took her study and her conclusions and shaped them to her preconceived beliefs. Look, her job is to find the problems with these chemicals like Drufo. So when she does studies, she's obviously going to take her preconceived ideas and make them match her study. This is called confirmation bias.
Would you explain what a valid study in your field would look like?
Specifically in today's case, a valid study would look like comparing farm laborers who work with fertilizers containing Drufo.
Objection, speculation.
Response, Your Honor?
Response, yes, you may.
Dr. Williams has been tenured in the fields of pharmacotoxicology with a specialization in environmental and occupational chemicals. He has the specialized knowledge, the training, and the experience to all testify on this.
Anything additional, Ms. Brown?
You asked about studies, and he's not entered as an expert in any area that would relate to the ability to conduct a study.
I'm going to sustain the objection as to the form of the question. You may rephrase your question if you wish to do so.
Dr. Williams, in your expert opinion, what would a study within the field of your expertise replicate?
A study, if we were to do it in our labs at Lush, would look like comparing farm laborers who work with fertilizers containing Drufo to farm laborers who work with fertilizers not containing Drufo.
Could you explain how this is differing from the other studies today in this case?
Yeah, Dr. Rogers' study compared farm laborers who worked with fertilizers containing Drufo to people who don't work at farms at all. I mean, these people have completely different lifestyles.
Why is this important?
Well, different lifestyles lead to different environments, and different environments lead to different environmental exposures. It's like comparing someone who works in an industrial iPhone factory to someone who grows oranges in their backyard. I mean, these people have completely different environmental exposures.
Going back to this case in particular, does Drufo cause cancer?
I can't answer if Drufo causes cancer because anything can cause cancer. Even eating too much tuna can cause cancer.
Are there any particular skills or tools that you use to shape this opinion?
I'm confident in the use of my statistics. I rely on statistics to come to an expert conclusion.
What do the statistics in the evaluation of this case show?
Well, Drufo is not correlated to a statistically significant increase in the incidence of non-Hodgkin lymphoma cases or any other cancer cases. In addition to this, you have to take into account the random element.
What is this random element?
Well, in some control groups, there's a higher amount of cancer cases than other groups. That's because people randomly get cancer sometimes. You have to take that into account to come to accurate conclusions.
Would you give an example to help the jury understand?
Sure, it's like flipping a coin. No matter how many times you flip it, you will always land on a heads or a tails. If you flip a coin 1,000 times, you will never get 500 heads and 500 tails. And that's because of that random element. You need to take into account that random element to come to an accurate conclusion about your prediction in the data.
Finally, Dr. Williams, Can you, to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, determine what caused Mrs. Weir's cancer?
It's impossible to know exactly what in the environment could have caused Miss Weir's cancer today. However, through statistical probability, I'm certain that Drufo could not have caused Dakota Weir's cancer today.
No further questions at this time.
Cross-examination.
Good morning, Dr. Devin Williams.
Good morning.
Is it true that you lead the toxicology research and development science lab?
Yes, I'm also the outgoing chair of the ethics committee.
You said you were hired to ensure Lush was being cost effective.
Yes, and I do.
Is it true that you admit to having a financial bias in this case?
I do have a financial bias, and that bias is to make sure that all my studies are accurate and that, look, I'm the head of the ethics committee. I need to make sure that all of our products that we're producing are safe for people and the environment in general.
Is it true that Durafo is banned not only in France, but the EU?
Drufo is banned in the EU. France is a part of the EU, and the reason why it's banned has nothing to do with cancer risks or any risks.
And you did not choose to fight the ban, correct?
Well, at the beginning of our career at Lush, of my career at Lush, we were too small and did not have enough money to actually run the studies to fight this ban. However, now we're going to fight that.
Does Durafo contain nitrogen?
Drufo does contain nitrogen.
And can nitrogen be harmful in humans?
If nitrogen turns to nitrate and gets into the environment, which is called eutrophication, it can be. But Drufo prevents that. It's a bonding agent that bonds nitrogen to the soil, that bonds the nitrates to the soil and doesn't let it get in the environment, which is why Drufo is so safe.
A study found that Durafo is harmful in rats, correct?
Yes.
Is it true that you never mentioned a study concluding Durafo is safe?
Can you ask that again?
Is it true that you never mentioned a study that concluded that Durafo is safe?
No, that's not true at all. At Lush, at the labs that I lead, we run so many studies showing how Drufo is safe.
But the only study you mentioned in your statement was Dr. Rogers' study.
I mentioned Dr. Rogers' confirmation bias within his study and the study that we ran at Lush Labs.
Your livelihood is Durafo, correct?
No.
But you make your living with Lush?
No, I don't. Lush is one of my jobs. I have several other jobs. However, that doesn't change my work ethic I put into my job at Lush.
And Lush wants to be the best-selling fertilizer company?
We do, and we are.
Wouldn't they rather just create a product that would get them to the top instead of being 100% safe?
No, we'd rather do both. Create a product that's 100% safe and that would get us to the top, which we did.
And you have experience analyzing chemicals such as Durafo?
Yes, I have several years of experience in this field.
Would you agree it takes time to analyze chemicals?
Yes, it does.
Would you agree analyzing chemicals takes commitment to the project at hand?
It does, yes.
But when you started working at Lush, there was a constant turnover?
At first there was 50% of the employees at Lush left. So I came in and I put in that work and I put in that commitment. And now we are where we are today, and I'm proud.
You said the turnover started to impact the timeliness of the studies?
Yeah, it was things like that. Those were the reasons why we couldn't fight the bans in the EU and things like that.
So these studies that were trying to prove Durafo is safe were affected by turnover?
No, of course not. Like I said, I put in the work and the commitment to make sure all these studies were accurate.
But they were affected by the timeliness because of the turnover?
Look, the timeliness had no effect. Essentially, the way we ran the studies were completely accurate. The time didn't matter. Whether it was a long study or a fast study, we got the study done and made sure that Drufo was safe for the environment.
But in some way, they were affected.
No,
The studies were affected. They were not affected by timeliness and the turnover.
like I said, no matter how long the study took, we made sure that it was an accurate study.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Redirect examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Dr. Williams, why is Drufo not sold in the European Union?
Drufo is not sold in the EU because of the EU's nitrate directive, which prohibits a certain amount of nitrate to be produced in the environment. However, Drufo does not produce that much nitrate in the environment at all, any nitrate in the environment at all.
Are you aware of any other reasons?
No, like I said, this is not based over any concerns or cancer risks.
And why did you not fight this ban in the beginning?
We were a small company. We didn't have a lot of money, and we were focused on proving studies to show how Drufo is safe in the environment instead of focusing on getting it throughout the whole world first.
And are there studies that show that Drufo is in fact safe?
There are countless numbers of studies that we ran in our labs that show that how it's safe.
And does the turnover at Lush have any effect on the safety of the product?
No, not at all. No matter how many scientists we had in that lab, no matter how much time we took on it, it did not affect the safety of Drufo and the validity of our tests at the lab at all.
No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
Recross examination.
Yes, Your Honor. So the EU found that Drufo could be dangerous regardless of your opinion on how they did that?
They did not find it could be dangerous. They found that through random bacteria that would never be found in the environment, it could produce nitrate into bodies of water. It's called eutrophication.
And currently, have you fought the ban?
No, not yet. We are working on fighting the ban as we speak. After we're done with this trial, I'm going right to the labs to get back on that.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Evidence having been completed, let's proceed to closing arguments. From the plaintiff.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, members of the jury and opposing counsel, my name is Katie Hay and I represent the plaintiff in this case. My client was once an active member of her community. She volunteered at homeless shelters, was a part of student leadership in school, was on her way to Juilliard, and was an avid piano player, using piano as a way to connect with her late grandfather. Now, all of these things have been stolen from her as a result of her use of Lush fertilizer. The chemical compound Drufo, which is contained in Lush fertilizer, caused her to contract a non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, poison for profit. This tumor has left her in sheer pain and utter agony. All of the things that have made her happy have been taken from her. Members of the jury, as the plaintiff, we do have the burden of proof. There were 4 things we needed to prove. 1, the defendant manufactured a fertilizer product containing the chemical compound known as Drufo. You've heard from multiple witnesses that this was indeed the case. There was no question about that. 2, the defendant was negligent by failing to exercise reasonable care. You heard from Carson about Lush's ignorance and negligence when it came to the research around Drufo, just so they could make more of a profit. 3, the plaintiff was one of those persons the defendant should have expected to use the product. Dakota worked at a landscaping company that often used fertilizer. Lush should have expected landscaping companies and their workers to use the product. And finally, the plaintiff had damages caused by the defendant's negligence while the product was being used in a manner the defendant should have reasonably expected. It isn't uncommon for young teens like Dakota to work at landscaping companies. No, she didn't wear all of the suggested clothing for safety, but she had been doing what all of the adult role models around her were doing. She was a child in sweltering summer heat. It's no wonder she couldn't handle wearing all of the suggested clothing. Lush barely made an effort and completely neglected to warn people about the dangers of their product, despite the research they chose to ignore. Lush Fertilizer had an opportunity to ensure their product safety by baking it. This was something they do to sell their product in other countries, but chose not to, and they chose to continue selling their poison. Confirmation bias was mentioned in regards to our witness, Carson Durst. However, Skylar Weirs is just as likely, if not more likely, to have been deceived by confirmation bias. It's easy to find research confirming your beliefs when the only research you do is via online search. Carson Durst, as well as other researchers at Lush, completed their own reports, and their results showed that Drufa was likely to be carcinogenic and cause non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Skylar did nothing but sit at her computer and look for the answers she wanted. Lush Fertilizer is trying to blame anyone they can to avoid dealing with the repercussions of their actions. They act like they're the victims when they ruined Dakota's life. They took everything from my client just so they could make a profit. They failed to show how dangerous their product truly was and the potential effects of it. Dakota Weirs was not at fault for her cancer. It was Lush's negligence and ignorance that was truly at fault. Members of the jury, we ask that you rule in favor of the plaintiff and be sure that she is awarded damages in the maximum amount allowed by law. Thank you.
Closing argument for the defense.
Yes, Your Honor. Not all heroes wear capes. When Blake Doncourt was younger, he wanted to be a superhero. Eventually, he accepted he'd never be as fast as the Flash or as strong as Superman. But he did find his own superpower, a fertilizer, created to be safer for the environment and safer for people everywhere. That very fertilizer that is so revolutionary is being labeled a killer. Good morning, Your Honor, counsel, members of the jury. My name is Ashlyn Barrick, and along with Heidi Haverkamp and Kira Graham, I had the privilege of representing Lush Fertilizer in today's trial. Now, both sides carried burdens, but let's talk about what the plaintiff failed to prove. The first element in contention is that Lush Fertilizer failed to prevent their product from creating an unreasonable risk of harm. Let me be clear. The notion that Lush's product was dangerous is absurd. The company didn't need to bake the fertilizer in order to eliminate an unreasonable risk of harm because there was no risk of harm to begin with. The real risks, eye irritation, skin rashes, typical. And by law, the company wasn't even required to put a recommendation on their label. But they still chose to go above and beyond. The second element in contention is that Dakota Weirs has damages that were caused by Lush Fertilizer's negligence while the product was being used in a way the company expected. Dakota Weirs admitted she chose not to follow the orders of her boss. She chose not to heed the warnings. What has happened to Dakota Weirs is a tragedy, and no one is asking you to deny that. But Lush Fertilizer was not the cause. They have failed to prove these two elements by a preponderance of the evidence. Now let's talk about what we proved. One, that Dakota Weirs did not act as a reasonable person should or would. And two, that he was the cause of his own damages. At the beginning of this trial, Ms. Graham asked you to remember 3 questions. The first, would we be here if Dakota Weirs had just worn protective gear like he was told. We don't know. Dakota Weirs saw a single news story and suddenly every single carcinogen in her life disappeared. We'll never know if it was caused by the dozens of fertilizers she handled or if it was caused by the very chemicals she used to clean her beloved piano, because she chose her villain from the start. The second question, what do competitors have to gain from this lawsuit? The answer, everything. Lush Fertilizer had cornered their market, and every step of the way, their competitors wanted to take them down. The final question, where is the definitive link between non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and Lush Fertilizer? There is none. Their desperate attempts to connect cancer to Drufo are riddled with flaws. Not all heroes wear capes. This is the last time that I get to speak to you today. But Miss Hay is going to come back up here and she's going to try and wash away everything we just talked about. Don't let her. Instead, ask her this question and make her answer it. What happened to every other carcinogen in Dakota Weir's life? And remember, poison doesn't make profit. Find Lush Fertilizer not liable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Hay, would you like to make a rebuttal argument?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense says that not all heroes wear capes, but is it very heroic for someone to fire an employee just because they tell you things you don't want to hear, because they try to inform people about all of the harm this product could cause? Again, Lush Fertilizer is trying to blame anyone they can to avoid dealing with the repercussions of their actions. Any reasonable person would struggle to wear the suggested clothing in the intense heat of the summer. The adult role models around Dakota didn't even wear the suggested clothing, and her boss never enforced these suggestions. If Lush had done the right thing and warned their product users about the true danger, about the fact that their product users could develop cancers from the use of Lush Fertilizer, then people would be safer and Dakota would not have to deal with all of this today. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will ask you all to join me in congratulating the attorneys and witnesses for the excellent job that they've done. Sorry we're not here in person to be able to do that, and all the folks that are watching, I'm sure, are also applauding. So thank you all. We'll take just a couple of minutes so that I can make sure the scoring panelists have been able to complete their score sheets. And I think, let's see, Ms. McCall may be the only one I'm not seeing on my screen, but I do see at least two. And so when Ms. McCall, you're done, if you could just put your camera back on again. Mr. Hirsch, have you gotten your scoring done? Are you in a position to then take a couple of minutes and just make any comments that you would like to?
Thank you, Your Honor. I appreciate that opportunity. And first of all, I want to congratulate everyone, including the coaches and including the family members, but witnesses, lawyers, all did an excellent job. And I've been trying cases in the 18th Judicial District since long before any of you were born, and as well as Angel McCall. She wasn't born either. But this is what I do. I try this kind of case, civil cases involving personal injury arising out of products. And I want to tell you guys right now, you all did as well or better than most of the lawyers I've been against, and frankly, than what I've done. And if you were all graduated from law school and looking for jobs, I would hire each and every one of you in a heartbeat. So please allow me to congratulate you. Your presentations were clear. Your thought process was persuasive. Your preparation was amazing. And I will just tell you, one of the things I loved was watching redirect, recross, rebuttal argument, because that's when you really relied on your training, relied on your work, relied on your experience and knowledge. And it was even better than what you had scripted out beforehand. So good work. Thank you for letting me witness this, and I congratulate you all.
Ms. Cox, would you like to take a minute or two and provide some comments?
Yes, thank you so much, Your Honor. Hi, everyone. I echo Mr. Hirsch's comments. What a spectacular job by all of you. Your preparation was really clear, how much hard work you've put into this, and it's shown in your performances. I coached mock trial, not this season, but before this season for 11 years. And so I've seen a ton of these types of performances. I know a lot of individual comments aren't necessarily that helpful to you at this stage in the game. So just more generally, I think I want to congratulate the plaintiffs team. You were obviously a woman down. And so all of you were working even harder. And it's just so impressive to see that you're able to pull it off with some pretty tough facts and things as well. So your team should be congratulated for that even extra amount of hard work. And you stayed calm under pressure, even when things were tough. So really great job to you. Defense team, you are so polished and your presentations were really, really strong, very impressive. So just great work. I hope you all get a little bit of caffeine before your final round. I know you're all going to do great in the fourth round, and congratulations.
Ms. McCall, a minute or two for comment? You're muted. There you go.
I'm good now. It was a pleasure watching how prepared everyone was. I am so impressed, calm under pressure. And I think that both teams did a great job. I actually enjoyed hearing the case. So I wish you luck on your next round, and I know you guys will do well.